Welcome to another edition of Wisdom Wednesday. Here with me today is Daniel Gershberg of Romer and DeBoss, one of the top attorneys and the top firms in New York City. And we are in a buyer's market, no question about that. And I wouldn't say I coined this phrase, but I kind of changed the phrase to an opportunity market because it's a great opportunity for buyers. Opportunity being a pivotal and key word right now because of a part of President Trump's new tax plan is a clause that specifically references opportunity zones. And that's something a lot of people aren't familiar with. Daniel knows a lot about it. So I want to take this opportunity, jump right into it, because it's a great opportunity, again, catchphrase, opportunity for investors to really make some great inroads on the level of return they can make on investments. So, Daniel, first of all, thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. Let's jump right into it. So opportunity zones, I know a little bit about it. Let's educate the folks about opportunity zones and what makes it such a great clause.
Yeah, so let's take it a step back for a second. That 2017 Jobs Act came in and everyone was sort of lampooning it, specifically New York and New Jersey residents, because you took such a huge hit in terms of deductibility on your property taxes and other taxes that you dealt with, right?
Commonly referred to as the SALT.
Correct, the SALT deductions themselves. So people started looking into it, and then they found this clause that was actually put in there that essentially allows private capital to come in and be poured into low-income communities and neighborhoods to better that neighborhood, right?
Okay.
To help property values, to establish businesses that weren't there before. And this does it in a way which actually reduces any kind of friction in the investment process. And the actual tax benefits are huge. Let me put a disclaimer on it. I am not an accountant. I'm just an attorney with...
You just play one on TV?
Yeah, I just play one on TV. I'm an attorney with very nice hair.
Right.
So if you have questions about it in detail, definitely talk to your accountant about it. But from our side, from the legal side, I think it's a game changer. I think it's going to be one of the top stories, specifically in Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan in 2019 in terms of your ability to take money and put it to work for you, and it serves underserved communities.
So let's break this down a little
Yep.
bit. So traditionally, if you were to invest in a property, you'll have capital gains taxes once you're ready to cash out. So let's speak to what makes this so much different than, let's say, a 1031 exchange.
So let me give you several reasons for that, and also an example to better show this. So let's say you invested in a particular property and you do via 1031 exchange. You sell that property, you now have to take the proceeds, the gains from that property, and within 45 days, identify a place where you're going to put that money,
right.
And it has to be real property, right? It has to be real estate, and you have to do a closing within a specific period of time, and that money has to stay there. As soon as you sell that property, you have to do it all over again until such time as you sell it and you pay capital gains on that money. So basically, you defer those gains for a period of time. And again, it's subject specifically to real property.
Right.
You can't do businesses or anything else. With opportunity zones, what you can essentially do is you can take the capital gains from anything. It could be a sale of Apple stock where you made $1 million in that sale, and you take that money. There's no identification period whatsoever. There's no this 45-day thing, so you're not under the gun as some investors are in terms of identifying something.
Right.
You basically put it in within 180 days. And if you hold it for a specific period of time, you can lower the tax base on that capital gain and essentially eliminate your capital gains altogether on the second investment that you make.
So, okay,
Yep.
that definitely gives some clarity to that. So that's like a great opportunity there for investment. Now, what I've been reading, because this entire process is really fluid. Generally, you're looking at 10 years, a decade, for how long you want to hold the property in an effort to really max out your return, and then to not pay any taxes on the capital gains.
Exactly. So let's take that example of the $1 million. It could be Apple stock. It could be a building, a 6-family that you sold, and your actual gain on it, your capital gain is $1 million on it. If you hold that property for 5 years, let's say, and you invest that $1 million into an opportunity fund or an opportunity zone, you hold that property for 5 years, this new piece of property, you're going to essentially deduct 10% off the top on what you pay capital gains on. So, for example, instead of paying capital gains on $1 million, you pay it on $900,000. You hold it for 7 years, then you pay $850,000. So there's a 15% haircut off the top. If you hold it for more than 10 years, at 2026, the year 2026, you're going to pay on that $1 million investment that was, I should say, capital gain that was put into an opportunity fund, you will pay capital gains on $850,000. Let's say you took the $1 million, you put it into this 6-family that's somewhere in Brooklyn, and then 20 years later you sell that 6-family for $4 million, you are still only liable in terms of capital gains on that original $850,000 capital gain. That's insane.
Right.
I sound like an infomercial, but it's just incredibly surprising to me that the tax benefits are that good. And I think that this really puts an onus on people to deploy money that was on the sidelines. And that's one of the reasons they passed this, was to get money off the shelves and put it into a lot of these communities themselves.
Right.
Yeah. So your benefits are way, way better after 10 years.
So I guess one of the first things is, how do you go about determining where the opportunity zones are? So that's the first question.
Yeah, so the government essentially, they asked the states to outline a number of these places, and the states came through very nicely. There's over, I believe, 8,700 opportunity zones across the country. Within Brooklyn and Queens, there's over 300 of them, and they're not just dictated by neighborhood. You know, as we were talking about before, you could have an opportunity zone that's on one side of the BQE, and the other side of the BQE doesn't have an opportunity zone. So they're delineated on several websites. I'll give you the web address if you want to post that, where you can actually go into interactive maps and see specific streets where you can actually deploy capital.
I mean, the first thing that I would think of for any prospective investor is just consider, you know, neighborhoods that are in the midst of transitioning. So if you stay there for 10 years, let's say, classic example, we're in Brooklyn, we'll talk Brooklyn, let's say East New York. I'm certain, and we'll verify, but I'm certain in different blocks in East New York, a zone is opportunity zones. That's already a transitioning neighborhood. You purchase right now for, let's say, $400,000. 10 years from now, clearly everything remaining the same. We all don't have a crystal ball, but the property appreciates. That's a hell of a return.
Yeah, and I leave it up to you. You're the ace of this, so you know way better than I do. And I agree with you. And one of the other things we were talking about is the drag on capital, right? Because you hold it for that period of time and you're not paying capital gains when you sell it, that's an enormous amount of money that stays in the investor's pocket that would ordinarily be paid out as tax. So the numbers themselves, the actual investment changes in terms of the way you actually look at it. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a couple of nuances, and again, I'm not certain your level of familiarity with this, but do you have to, I would imagine you have to create an LLC or incorporate, or, you know, somehow initially start the fund. But there's not, the one thing I think that's really important here to know is that, and you can clarify this if this is the case, there's not a minimum amount that you have to put in. You can come into a fund and put maybe $100,000, maybe $50,000, and still get that level of return.
I'm going to say it's fluid. As I understand it, there's not a minimal amount that's actually there. You set up an LLC, you set up an S Corp, you set up a C Corp, whatever it is, and you're fine. You essentially self-report. It's a one-pager that is filed with the IRS saying, I set up an opportunity fund to start investing in these communities. And that's it. And again, going back to 1031, that differs. There's no sense, there's no reason for an intermediary to hold your money where you pay several $1,000s for them to do so. This is all on you, essentially. So long as you take, when you receive the money, you actually invest that money within 180 days, you're fine. And on top of that, as I understand it, if you don't invest it within the 180 days, it's not as if you lose this opportunity fund status. You essentially just pay a small penalty on that money that's actually there, and you continue going. Wow. Yeah, so it's really been set up in a way that's easy for people to start the process with. There aren't these gatekeepers that there usually are. But I would definitely tell the people that are interested, in addition to having a broker that's familiar with this, is to speak to accountants that are also familiar with this, because this is completely new. We just saw a story not too long ago, but an hour ago. So a lot of this stuff is changing. Treasury just issued regulations not too long ago and some guidelines. And there's going to be people that try and take advantage, or lawyers are going to see case law come out with that, and we're going to be able to tell you guys what you can't do, what you can do, etc. But it's an interesting program. I
mean, and it's all fluid. And typically, the best time to really invest in something like this is in its earliest stages. So if you're an investor out there and you're considering some place to park your money for 5, 7, maybe even 10 years, opportunity zones can be the ideal opportunity for you to really start 2019 with a bang. So thanks so much, Daniel. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Absolutely.
See what I did.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
See you guys next Wednesday.